Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're going to be doing part 10 of our Jurassic World Evolution Accurate Dinosaur mod collection. So we take a look at a bunch of different mods people have been making and compare them to their real-life fossil counterparts. And today, I had a different episode in mind, but we got so many new species coming as replacements, so I thought I'd added to kind of bring it back because I haven't done one of these in a while. I thought I'd bring a lot of those cool species in so you guys could be like, oh, look at all these cool animals. So yeah, I'm really excited to go through this one. So we're going to be starting off today. We've got our herbivores first. We're going to be starting off with a Winodon, replacing Dinosaurus by Jabroa, or it's Jabroa, I think it is. Pretty sure that's the correct one. So let's have a look at this guy here. So wonderful, cute little guys here. Let's get out of here and go into first-person mode and take a look at them. I think that'd be fun. So you get to see the size of them. So I think you don't let you pause, but we're gonna have a look at these wonderful guys here as we look at them pause. So this is let's hide the UI. This is Owenodon. So Owenodon is known from a partial jaw, lower jaw. So not very much is known about this guy, but it's enough to tell what it's kind of related to. It's an iguanodontian dinosaur. It was actually discovered in early Cretaceous age rocks from the United Kingdom around Dorset, and the specimen came from the middle Berrizian stage, so it's like really early in the Cretaceous, about 143 million years ago, and this piece of jaw was first described by Richard Owen, who's basically considered almost like the grandfather of paleontology and a lot of the natural sciences like that. And in 1874, so quite a long time ago, it was assigned to Iguanodon and was the type specimen for a new species of Iguanodon, so Iguanodon hodgi, and which is the specific name that honored the naturalist A.J. Hogg, who collected the fossil in 1860. So, yeah, there's really not much we can say about the accuracy of this guy, but it's pretty similar to what we would think of a early-ish iguanodontian. Maybe a little bit more like Iguanodon or something a little bit early like Camptosaurus is a good example, but this is kind of our best guess considering it's only a partial lower jaw. So the story about this is that it was damaged during its initial preparation by the surrounding rock. As they took it out, it was kind of damaged, and with acid as well, so it kind of really hurt it. But the other people that looked at it, and it seems like from about 2002, it was actually transferred to a species of Camptosaurus, but then in 2009, Peter Galton actually assigned it to its own genus of Owenodon, and which names means Owen Tooth, in honor of Sir Richard Owen, who, as I mentioned before. And it seems like from this most recent study into its cladistics that this guy is a iguanodontian that's more closely, that's more derived than Camptosaurus, but less derived to something like Ludosaurus. So it's kind of that really early kind of like the transitional stage from our like Cretaceous and late Jurassic types like Camptosaurus into our kind of later, so things like Ludosaurus and Iguanodon and Mantellosaurus and leading into those guys. So that's something that's very, very interesting, and it tells a lot about this guy's little character. And I'm a big fan. You can have a look at all the different skins as you walk around. I just got to say, I love the first person mode. I'm really glad we got it, and I'm a big fan of how these guys came out. Really gives you a sense of their scale as well. Big fan. Very big fan. So next we have got, that was by Jabot. Next we've got one by Mega Game & Rex. So good old Mega Game & Rex. We've got a remake. Well, it's a more accurate Parasaurolophus, as I'll get into. So yeah, we're gonna have a look at this guy, and I'll show you why it was put on the Amatosaurus. I have to say the patterns really fit on this guy here. So let's see if we can get one in the nice sun. We'll have a look at this one over here. I'm a big fan of this skin, so we're going to have a look at it in first person, because why not? Look at this wonderfully big animal. So let's hide the UI. Gee. Look at this wonderful big animal. I'm a big fan of this guy. So this is done by Mega Gaming Rex. You guys know him from Planet Zoo as well. Really prolific modder, and I really love how he did this Parasaurolophus, and it really fits the Iguanodon rig, not Iguanodon, Edmontosaurus rig much better, since it's believed that Parasaurolophus was most likely a quadruped rather than the kind of kangaroo look it's got in Jurassic World and Jurassic Park. But we can also see how much nicer it looks in here, I think, compared. And you can see the head there. This is based, I believe, off Walkeri. So that's kind of the most famous species of Parasaurolophus you can get. That's like the most charismatic one. And also the holotype of the genus, which is actually, I believe, there's a study on this, and it seemed that the holotype was actually hit by a falling tree before it died. It's one of the hypotheses of why it may have been injured enough to die, but it shows there's a lot of pathologies from a large object, most likely a tree, just falling on it. So a little bit aside. But I'm a really big fan of how this guy came out. I like the head of it. It really does fit what we know of Walkeri. Really like this neck. There's been some studies into the necks of dinosaurs, especially like hadrosaurs, and it seems it had a big nugal ligament, which was a big ligament that goes from the base of the head to the shoulders, and it may have been actually quite cow-like, as you can kind of see here. A bit slimmer than most, but I think it came out really well. And you can see the long body there and the long tail. As I mentioned, it's walking on all fours like we believe most large hadrosaurs were, because that kind of walking around on its back legs is kind of a old hypothesis now. Most of these larger guys were most likely on all fours, but they could potentially rear up to like graze or display, or potentially even run to some extent, but kind of now everyone's just kind of settled on all fours. And you can see just the size of it. A really big animal. A really big fan of this guy. I believe the largest Walkeris are like about 10 meters long or so. Something like that. There's some like Qianjianglong, have potentially got even bigger. That was a really big one. And there's like the smaller species, crypto something, I forgot the name of it. Prehistoric Kingdom really shows off the size as well. So if you guys got the demo or early access coming out soon, you guys can have a look at the sizes of the 3 different species of Parasaurolophus close to each other. But yeah, I'm just a really big fan of how these skins came out. This one looks like the one from JP3 almost. I'm really big fan of how these guys came out. Really, really beautiful. I really like mixing the skins. I love this grayish on them. Really looks awesome. Really, really nice. And it really fits with the Parasaurolophus as well. I'm glad that we got a good look at these guys. Big fan. Big fan of these guys. So let's let them walk out. So that was again done by Mega Game & Rex. So we'll wait for these little gremlins to kind of go off and do their own thing and not block my center here. Oh, no, we want them to walk. So we're going to be starting off with our next dinosaur. We've got a couple sauropods now, which I know you guys always love your sauropods. We have got a guy returning from like the last episode, the last game. So it's a new mod. We've got Brachytrachelopan by NetRaptor. So that's going to be really awesome to see. Replaces the Amargasaurus. So let's have a wonderful look at this guy. So we got a couple wonderful little guys here. Let's forward them a little bit so they can walk out into the sun. Wonderful little men's here. So let's let them walk a little bit more as well, just so we can get a good view of them in the sunlight. So let's go into first person view next to these guys, show you the size of them. Not the very biggest dinosaurs, but still really cool to see them up close. So this is Brachytrachelopan, which is a very short-necked sauropod, which is very weird considering that most of the famous depictions of sauropods has got them with these really long necks. These guys are from Argentina and are from the late Jurassic, from the Oxfordian to the Tenothian. So are really like same time as kind of your big favorites like Stegosaurus, Brachiosaurus, but came from Argentina. So a very cool part of the world, especially for sauropod evolution. Yeah, but the holotype is only known specimen was collected from in an erosional area of like sandstone within the Caron Carolino Formation in a hill that was approximately 25 kilometers or 16 miles north of I needed to say the city name, Sarcosaurus, in the Chuxut province in west central Argentina in South America. So the fossil itself was very incomplete, but there were found in articulation, such as like cervical vertebrae, sacral vertebrae, things like that, and lots of other pieces that's enough to kind of tell what it generally looked like, but not that much. So kind of the most obvious thing about these guys is that they have a very short neck, especially for a sauropod, which are very, very famous for having very, very long necks. But these guys are a group of sauropods called the Dicraeosaurs that includes animals like Amargasaurus, Dicraeosaurus, did I say Amargasaurus, and also Sawasia from America, and all of these other guys here. So these guys have a very, very short neck, it's even shorter than most other Dicraeosaurs. So this guy's like an outlier of an outlier. And it's actually 40% shorter than other Dicraeosaurids and the shortest of any known sauropod in terms of its neck length. And it seems that these guys were kind of filling an ecological niche that was actually pretty different than lots of other sauropods. And these are also pretty small for a sauropod. They're believed to be less than 10 meters long, or 33 feet in length. And also noted that the high degree of fusion and stuff, it evidenced that this did not represent a juvenile animal. So all the bones being fused suggest that this was an adult when it died. So it's believed to be just a really small-looking, short-necked sauropod, which is very interesting. So, as I mentioned, it's a member of the Dicraeosaurs. Its closest relatives are like Amargasaurus, which it would lead into, because Amargasaurus, I believe, is from the early Cretaceous. And Dicraeosaurus is also another guy from Africa, which is a late Jurassic African taxon. And it seems to be this radiation of like southern Dicraeosaurids as they did, because there's one from America, and then most of the later ones are from South America and places like that. So it's kind of that southern radiation is where they did well. And in terms of its ecology, it's believed that the shorter necks that the Dicraeosaurs had, there seems like more evident in Brachytrachelopan, which just shows that they runs like differently than most other sauropod adaptations. So that instead of getting longer necks, these guys got shorter necks. So it's believed that these guys were kind of adapting to browse on lower forage. So it's typically either being like shoulder level, or even grazing is believed. And most of the morphology on the neural arches of these guys shows that they were very specialized at eating plants between 1 and 2 meters down to the ground. So they're typically eating in that like range there. And also suggests that the diet may have been a limiting factor in body size for these guys, and they may have actually occupied the same ecological niche as like the larger Iguanodontian low browsing ornithopods, which were absent from late Jurassic Gondwanian continents and also later into the future, which seems to be where all these Dicraeosaurs came from. But they've also been seen in a lot of other ecosystems where, especially in the north, they have iguanodon, and all the hadrosaurs would come to basically take that same niche. But in the south, they didn't typically have those kind of animals there. So these guys kind of took that role and became that mid-level or low-level browser. So it's a really good example of convergent evolution with these iguanodontians and like hadrosaurs and these guys here of similar evolution. So I think that's really, really cool. And Brachytrachelopan is just a very cool dinosaur. And NetRaptor did a really wonderful job representing this guy. And look how cute they are. I like the size of them. You can come up and pet them. How cute. I like these skins as well. A really nice contrast. I'm a really big fan. So let's let these guys walk off and do their thing. So we're going to have a look at our next dinosaur. So NetRaptor also did this next dinosaur. We have got a really, really cool guy here. So this is Qianjianglong. Oh, you're not even moving properly. You're kind of standing there. We'll have to wait until these guys move. But this is also done by NetRaptor. They're going to social animation. Oh, cute. Oh, cute. Okay, now run off. Run off. Come on. Vamos. Get out of here. Oh, no, they're sleeping. And now, look, all the problems. All the dinosaurs are coming up this way. There's no respect. Okay, so let's have a look at the Qianjianglong. So this is replacing the Mamenchisaurus, and also done by NetRaptor. So we'll have a look at this wonderful guy now. So this is a very, very interesting dinosaur we got here. I don't think we'll have a look at the first-person view of this guy. It'd be very, very difficult to get a full-on look at this guy from that kind of level. But a really, really cool dinosaur we've got here. Let me just wait for him to get out of the darkness. There we are. So let's have a look at you like that. Okay, so have a look. Wonderfully big dinosaurs. So, Qianjianglong is a sauropod dinosaur. This is one of those relatives of animals like Mamenchisaurus and Omosaurus, so those kind of animals, and it's from the early Cretaceous of China, so it's a little bit later than these guys. So this guy was first discovered in the early 1990s by a farmer named Changming from Herbivore village, I believe, in Xunshan, China. Don't butcher me for my pronunciation, I'm clearly not Chinese. And was work on a nearby construction site also uncovered a rich fossil quarry where it seems like they took this earlier find and thought, oh, there's actually a whole skeleton here. And in 2015, the type species of this guy, Qianjianglong JWE2, was named. And the generic name combines the district Qianjiang with the Mandarin Long, which is for dragon. So it's basically the Qianjiang dragon, and the specific name, or the species name, is JWE2, which is nutshell, which is that of a Chinese scientific social network. So it's kind of like the LinkedIn of China, pretty much. I think that's probably the best comparison. So the holotype is found in a layer of the Shunin Formation, which was seen as dating to the late Jurassic, but is actually now considered mid-Cretaceous, based on radiometric dating. And it contains a partial skull and includes the rear of the skull, several vertebrae, some ribs, tail vertebrae, and a lot of those guys, a lot of those kind of muscles, and not muscles, bones. And it likely represents a large but immature specimen, so it's very possible that we could find larger specimens of this species going on. So the holotype of this guy was about 15 meters long and had a long neck. The describing paper suggests that there's several autapomorphies, which are kind of things that kind of show it apart from other dinosaurs, and like things including like the pubic bone, lots of differences in the skull that really show that this guy is its own genus. And Qianjianglong is actually placed in the family Mamenchisauridae, so it's related to animals such as Mamenchisaurus, and it has a very, very basal position, or a relatively basal position, but above animals like Omosaurus in the evolutionary tree, so it's very possible this can be like a more ancient living lineage, because a lot of those guys lived in the Jurassic. So very interesting talk about this guy, but big fan of how this guy looks. I think we should have a look at him in first person, just marvel at his size. Such a big animal. Look at these wonderfully big sauropods. Incredible. And you can even walk under them. How's that? So yeah, the specimen itself was nowhere near this big. It probably wouldn't actually been too much bigger than these guys. But being based on the Mamenchisaurus, it's obviously going to be really, really huge. So yeah, really nice job with that. NetRaptor, another wonderful job. So now we've moved on from our herbivores. We're going to be moving on to our pterosaurs. So we're going to move over to the aviary here, as you can see. So next we're going to have a look at a replacement for Dimorphodon. We've got a dinosaur, not a dinosaur, Pterosaur Feilongus. So we'll get really excited to get stuck into this guy. Let's see if we can find him resting on a perch. That'll really be helpful for our little experiment here. I know that we're really going to stop at the moment, but we'll just watch them go. So these guys are a very interesting pterosaur. Oh, I want to have a look at you, but just hide the statistics. Really interesting little pterosaur here. I keep saying dinosaur, but it's pterosaur. Pterosaurs are not dinosaurs, people. So these guys are an extinct genus of centenocasmid pterodactylid pterosaur. So that's a bit of a mouthful, as I'll explain what those are. From the Berriman-Aptian stage of the Lower Cretaceous, from the Yixian Formation, which is famous for producing Yixian tyrannus and Bipaposaurus, which is in Bipapo-Liaoning, China. So very famous formation with lots of different cool dinosaurs and animals found from there. So this guy was named and described in 2005 as the type species is Feilongus youngi, and the name derives from Feilong, which means flying dragon. And the specific name honors the Chinese paleontologist Yang Zhenjiang, which is C.C. Young. And this is based on a holotype which has a skull, a mandible, and the same plate of detached posterior brain case, which of a sub-adult individual. So it seems this guy, as he was dead, as he died, he was a baby and not fully grown, and the individual was also strongly crushed. And in 2014, another specimen was found, which was referred to Feilongus spur, and it consisted of a lower jaw and a skull and some vertebrae, which is possible sub-adult, or despite the smaller size, potentially an adult. So these guys aren't the biggest of the pterosaurs, of course. These guys estimated the wingspan to be about 2.4 meters as if it behind feet, which makes it pretty large for a basal pterodactylid, but it's not the largest, of course. And it was also notable for having two bony crests on its skull, so one at the bottom of the snout here and one at the top of the snout, and one projecting from the rear of the skull, and has these really long teeth, and upper jaws being 10% longer, or 27 millimeters longer than the lower jaws, so it would have had a slight overbite, but the second specimen actually does not show neither the crest nor the overbite, so that could be potentially deformities in the animal or changes in preservation and stuff like that. And the preserved part of the second crest was short with this leading round edge that you see here, and may have been a low crest like that. And the skull as well holds these really needle-like teeth, about 76 of them, with 18 in the upper and 19 in the lower jaw, confined to the beak ends and the interior third of the jaw. And the second specimen has about 78 teeth. And the neck vertebrae of the second specimen were very elongated, with about 5 times longer than they are wide. So they have quite a long neck, but again, this has to fit on the Dimorphodon, so it doesn't really show exactly what it looked like. But still really cool regardless. So these guys have their own really unique clade of pterosaurs. So Feilongus is actually described as a close relative, and a clade is kind of Gallodactylus and Sarcosaurus, I believe you're pronouncing that, which makes it a member of Gallodactylidae, which is a group of Chintocasmicids, Castonans, I believe you pronounce that. So it's in this own kind of unique little group of pterodactylids that's kind of from Asia, I believe. And there's been some other talks about this, considering being Archaeopterodactylid and other things like that. But the 2018 phylogeny kind of recovers it as the Centenocasmids, so it's this group of really interesting pterosaurs, and it's believed to be a sister taxon of the sister taxon of Morganopterus, which is in the subfamily Morganopteridae. So it's its own little group of kind of early-ish pterodactylids. So this is kind of the in-between before the Jurassic types. We get Rhamphorhynchus and those really long-tailed ones, and this is kind of in that transitional stage between the later ones that include, of course, later things like its starkids and things like that. These are kind of those early relatives of animals like that, so it's kind of that really weird midway evolution in that, because it's known from the early Cretaceous, it's kind of when those guys were starting to take over. So really, really wonderful little guy here, so we'll let him go off and do his own thing. So, Feilong, you did a wonderful job of that, and we'll be covering a lot more of your mods soon, of course, and it's cool that you see the inspiration of the name for Feilongus. So next, we've got another one from NetRaptor. We've got replacing Japijara. We have got Balcundraco. So it's another really interesting animal. Let's see what this guy's going to do. I want to see one in a good colour. Where's one with a good colour? Have a look at you. So let's have a look at you. So this is another really interesting pterosaur. So this is Balcundraco, which is a genus of pterodactylid pterosaur from the Lower Cretaceous, about the Santonian, and is found in the Balcony Mountains. It's found in western Hungary, so it's a very interesting European animal. So it was described in 2005, and the type species Balcundraco glaci, which means name refers to the Balky Mountains and Latin for Draco, which is dragon. And the specific species Galensi honors the Professor Andreas Glaci, who was helped with the project and the fossils and stuff like that. So it was actually the first kind of discovery of pterosaurs ever made in Hungary. So that's very interesting, a little bit of history there. So the holotype itself is based on a mandible and parts of the lower jaw, but there's like other assigned parts. There's like a paratype with different things like that, like lower jaws, wing bones, things like that. It seems like the lower jaw, as you can see here, was kind of toothless, and the two halves of the mandibulars are like fused across its length, so it had this kind of like spear-headed or arrowhead type shape to it, and the extension of it as well seems to have like just given that really interesting look. And the jaws of the specimens is about 29 centimeters or 11.4 inches long, and the wingspan has been estimated to about 3.5 to 4 meters, so about 11 to 13 feet. Which is about medium size for pterosaurs, and definitely not as large as those larger starkids, or even things like Pteranodon, but it's definitely still a large animal. And because the jaws are actually relatively taller than other starkids, and reminiscent of Tapijara, it's believed that this guy could have been a piscivore or a frugivore, so either feeding on fish or eating kind of things like fruits and things. So that's kind of a similarity. So initially this guy was described as in the starkid, so this is the kind of animals that include, obviously, Quetzalcoatlus, Hepzygopteryx, and a lot of those guys. But it actually been proposed more recently that this guy is a Tapijarid, which was slightly more basal than both Tapijara and Tupandactylus. And the original paper describing this species compared the holotype to Tapijara and Sinopterus, which shows that this clade may have actually had a large amount of convergence rather than being actually related. So if Balcundraco is actually a Tapijarid, it actually represents the only late Cretaceous record of a Tapijarid known to date, aside from the slightly older Caldijara, so that's very interesting. And whatever kind of what you see it as is actually very interesting implications. So it shows like either incredible convergence with within its starkids to these Tapijarids, or it's a late surviving Tapijarid. So either way, it's a really cool conclusion. So I think that's really, really cool. But the most recent analysis conducted by David Mentel and colleagues suggests that they found it within Tapijaridae, and the time consisting of two lineages is Tapijarine and Cyanopteridae, and it was actually recovered within the subfamily Cyanopteridae in the basalmost position, which is shown on different cladograms and things like that. So it's very interesting. But obviously the most recent one supports the Tapijarid conclusion, but again, both conclusions I think are very, very cool. Especially being a basal member from, like, being the latest one and a basal member. So that potentially shows that either a lot of convergence or really just an animal just doing its own weird thing. So I'm a big fan of how this guy came out. Really, really wonderful. So we're going to let him fly off and do his own thing. So next we're going to move on to our carnivores. So we've got another really interesting little dinosaur here. So we've got replacing the Troodon. Again, the Balcundraco is done by NetRaptor. This one was done by NetRaptor as well. We have got Fukuivenator, which is very fitting on the Troodon. So we'll open up these guys and have a look. So this will be perfect to have a look at in first-person mode. So we'll just watch them walk off. So let's have a look at our first-person mode and have a look at these wonderful guys. So really wonderful, big fan. So these guys are a medium-sized Megaraptoran theropod that was discovered from the early Cretaceous, or about the Barmeridian or the Attian, and lived in China. So that's where it gets the name Fukuivenator. So we'll explain a little bit about that soon. And may actually be found in the other formation, the Shimbayushi formation, I believe I pronounced that. So the type specimen itself was discovered in the Qianjianglong quarry near Kashmir in the Fuki province, or the preference, I pronounce that. It's thought that the specimen was not mature, and the adult may have been much larger, and there have been remains of other individuals that kind of show that there's many different humeri, femuruses, and teeth that have been referred to the species. But however, other individuals recovered from the same locality are mostly juveniles and much smaller than the holotype, but the smallest size being less than a quarter than the size of the holotype. So these guys are actually believed to be pretty big, so it's indicated by its slender phalanges, or its fingers. It's actually believed to be lightly built, regardless of maturity. It's quite a lean and mean animal. In 2010, they estimated that its size was actually about 5 meters long, or about 16 feet, and a weight of 300 kilograms. And they even later estimated about 4.3 meters and 590 kilograms in 2016. So this kind of represents kind of a younger individual, but even then it was still quite lean. The distinctive teeth of this guy is actually quite different from other Maniraptorids. It actually shows similarities with both Carcharodontosaurids, which is being very compressed and blade-like as well as having that wrinkle enamel, and also Tyrannosaurs, which have these blade grooves and actually being thick as well. So it's kind of a mix of that, so it shows it's kind of doing something unique. And the holotype is very flat with manual angles or hand claws that seems that played a role of being initially described as a dromaeosaur, with the hand claws being mistaken for foot claws. Very kind of gets that name for Fukuivenator. But the current classification is a Megaraptor, which is a very weird group of theropods. So things like you can see here that dew claw, it wouldn't have a dew claw. So this guy is most likely a Megaraptor, but I do like that little add of feathers on there. I think it was really nice. This is great for like a young individual. I think potentially like a couple years old or something like that. I think this is a perfect representation of that, other than the dew claw. So as I mentioned, these guys were originally described as a dromaeosaur, and are believed to be, and its initial describe is considered to be relative of like a carnosaur, which was kind of like a waste bucket, which was related to Allosaurus, and even has been put in Neovenatoridae. But it's believed now these guys are actually Megaraptorids, Tyrannosaurids, though the placement of Megaraptorans is very controversial. And it seems to be very basal to that group of Megaraptorans, so it's a very early one. And it's kind of that early relative animals such as Megaraptor, Astiodon, and Australovenator. So really early relative of that. So in this formation where it was found, fossils of those have been found of kind of like Fukuiosaurus, which is an Ornithischian, Fukuivenator, which is a sauropod, Hadrosaurs, Fukuivenator is another thing as well, a Maniraptoran, and Fukuiopteryx, which was an avian. So there's lots of dinosaurs named with Fukia, something like that, in its name. So this was a very packed ecosystem, it seems, in the early Cretaceous and Japan. So it seems like it was really having its own little ecosystem going on, which is very cool. Big fan of that. So let's watch these guys move off and do their own thing. So again, that was done by NetRaptor. So our next animal, second but most definitely not least, we've got a remake of a Tyrannosaur I think most people love. So let's just wait for these guys to move off out of the way. Just watch these guys. I don't want them blocking my way. Are they running in corners there? Weird. Okay, so we've got... It's not a Qianjianglong, but it's a dinosaur I think you guys will all like. Done by Mega Game & Rex, so let's have a looky-loo. We've got ourselves a Gorgosaurus, people. Let's have a look at this one over here, since he's all at a nice clearing. So look at this wonderful guy here. So this is our Gorgosaurus. Wonderful, cool to see this model like this, isn't it? I love this first-person view. But here we've got Gorgosaurus, which name means dreadful lizard. And it's a tyrannosaur theropod, so related to everyone's favorite big bad T-Rex. It's from North America, from the late Cretaceous, about the Campanian. So it lived between 76 and 75 million years ago. And has been found from Canada and Montana. And they actually recognize this one type species, Gorgosaurus liberatus. There have been other ones that have been described, but it's kind of one of those things. So this guy was first described in 1914, and obviously that name... dreadful lizard, or balance, so like the balanced dreadful lizard, or to balance dreadful lizard. And the holotype was a nearly complete skeleton, which was found in the Dinosaur Park Formation of Alberta, and was actually held in the Canadian Museum of Natural History in Ottawa. And the prospectors of this also came to this formation trying to find other specimens, and other specimens of Gorgosaurus were found. So very sort of history as well. They've also been found in the Tube Medicine Formation and the Judith River Formation, which is believed to belong to Gorgosaurus. And it's whether it's this species or a new species is kind of whatever floats your boat. But there's actually shows evidence of these guys with several pathologies, especially in one specimen from Montana, that shows to have healed ribs, a healed leg, fractures like osteomyelitis, which is an infection in the bone. The tip of the lower jaw, resulting in... so this infection was at the bottom of the jaw, so it seems that these guys had permanent teeth loss, and actually had a brain tumor as well, potentially. So it's very, very interesting. So these guys are smaller than your typical big, like Tyrannosaurus and Tarbosaurus. So it was more in line with animals such as the Spletosaurus and Albertosaurus, which lived with the Spletosaurus. It reached about 8 to 9 meters long, or about 26 to 30 feet from snout to tail. And it's estimated that adult Gorgosaurus would be about 2.5 tons, and potentially up pushing 3 tons, but that's a bit of an overstretch. And the largest known skull is about 99 centimeters, or 39 inches long, so a little bit smaller than that of Spletosaurus. And as in the other guys, he's had large openings, reduced weight, and not too different from other bones of similar tyrannosaurids. It actually had that general body plan. It had this massive head with these 2 fingers and quite a long body. It wasn't quite as big and bulky as Tyrannosaurus itself, but it had that more similar, like Albertosaurine type look to it. And in 2001, they actually reported skin impressions from these guys, so that's also very interesting. So it seemed that these guys had very smooth scales, and very similar to like the featherless skin that you find in large modern birds. So that's kind of been a thing in the debate whether tyrannosaurids were feathered. But yes, I think that's really, really cool that we managed to find that. And other patches have been seen, similar to like hadrosaurs and like Gila monster type things, very small scales. Potentially like reticulae, which is the featherless skin that you see in birds. But yeah, really, really cool. So these guys, as I mentioned, they're an Albertosaurines. They're closely related to that Albertosaurus, which is slightly younger. Another animal that's related to it is Alpachosaurus, which was believed to be another one of these guys as well. And some people have often lumped these two species, genuses together, with Gorgosaurus being the same as Albertosaurus, which is, with Albertosaurus being named first, so that means every species of Gorgosaurus or Gorgosaurus would just be Albertosaurus, but obviously being taxonomy and being separated, obviously people really, especially dinosaur paleontologists, they like to split things, so it just is what it is. But there are a lot of anatomical differences between these guys that at least suggest that they're definitely at the species level, at least, so they're quite different from each other. And in terms of life's history, it's there's been studies into the bone histology to see how their bones grow, and they're very, very interesting. So these guys reach sexual maturity at like a later phase. So 5 Gorgosaurus specimens of various sizes were calculated with a maximum growth of about 50 kilograms, or about 1,100 pounds per year, within that rapid growth phase, which is slower than tyrannosaurians like the Spinosaurus and Tyrannosaurus, but is comparable to things like a Bertosaurus. So these guys didn't quite grow as fast as things like the Spinosaurus and Tyrannosaurus, which grew like nearly a ton a year at some points. But yeah, so these guys spent pretty much half their lives as a juvenile before they ballooned up and got really big. Had this growth spurt about like teenage years, at about a few years old. So and this, along with the lack of predators within that intermediate size, suggests that these guys kind of occupied two niches in their lives. So, kind of the first half of their life, they'd be that like low-level predator. They'd be like a jackal or something like that. Then they would evolve or grow up to become that kind of lion or hyena in that ecosystem for the comparison. So this is a pattern they've actually seen a lot in like Komodo dragons, because hatchling Komodo dragons are so much smaller than the adults, they can't occupy the same niche. So they become tree-dwelling invertebrates, and then as they mature, they come down from the trees and start to eat bigger animals such as pigs and deer and things like that. But other tyrannosaurs showed that these guys may live in mixed-age packs, that there's been no evidence for this behavior in Gorgosaurus, which is very interesting. So, as I mentioned, this pathology is very interesting. They also had a high bite force, so about 442,000 newtons. And in terms of paleoecology, I mentioned they kind of lived in the Campanian between 76 and 74 million years ago, and is found in the Two Medicine Formation, the Judith River Formation, and the Dinosaur Park Formation. So, quite a widespread animal within America. And at this time, this area was kind of like a coastal plain on the western edge of the Western Ontario Seaway, which was receding at the time. So there's these big floodplains with conifers and canopies and things like that. And it was kind of shrinking and becoming this less ocean, more like coastal plain. And these kind of habitats had all sorts of different animals in them, like Champsosaurus, which are like lizard crocodiles, normal crocodiles, lots of different types of fish, frogs, salamanders, lots of small mammals, alligator lizards and monitor lizards. There were also huge herds of ceratopsians, so there'd be things like, I'm thinking of the species, but you had all sorts of other animals such as Pterosaurs, nodosaurs, ankylosaurids, lots of dinosaurs that you'd kind of think of. And these guys actually did live with the Spinosaurus, which was another relative. So at the middle stage of the Dinosaur Park Formation, they were a lot more common than the Spinosaurus in their ecosystem, but they were obviously, as I mentioned, much more prolific. So it's believed that these guys may have actually fed on different things, so they would have been niche petitioning within these guys. So the Spinosaurus would have been eating animals such as hadrosaurs, so like Edmontosaurus and Cretonosaurus, and even things like Chasmosaurians would be more for the Spinosaurus. So the Spinosaurus would be eating things like Ceratopsians and Ankylosaurus, since they were bigger and more robust. So it's kind of that niche petitioning, like almost like just that different animals eating different things, so they don't compete with each other. But what really happened is that these guys potentially either went extinct by coming in the ancestors of Tyrannosaurus, and that's kind of destroyed that, and then Tyrannosaurus kind of became that sole Tyrannosaur in the ecosystem. And there have been actually Albertosaurian remains found in Health Creek, but they're most likely just a species of Tyrannosaur, or just Tyrannosaurus itself. Yeah, it's one of those things. Really, really interesting though. I'm a big fan of how Gorgosaurus came out. I'm a really big fan of this model. Really fits well on the Qianjianglong, and you can really have a look at the nice model there. We can have a look at the other ones, because I know everyone loves the Tyrannosaurs. Really big fan of these guys. And I really love being able to see them up close like this, and show them how big they are next to a person. So yeah, that's a really, really nice dinosaur that we got to look at. So last but most definitely not least, we're going to have a look at the last animal in our look. We're going to go to the lagoon. So we've got another one by Megagamon Rex. So we've got it's not a Chronosaurus, but a close relative. We've got Sarcosaurus. So this is a really interesting animal done by Mega Gaming Rex, and let's just have a look at this guy. So this is, as I mentioned, Sarcosaurus. So this is a extinct group of brachiosaurine Pleisaurid? Yeah, Pleisaurid. My mouth was just not saying the word. This guy is known from the Berenian of the Paja Formation in Colombia and the eastern ranges of the Andes. So that at the time that would have been underwater. And the type species is Sarcosaurus vitali. I believe that's how it's pronounced. So the genus name of this guy, Sarcosaurus, was referred to Sarkia, which is the village where the fossil was found, and Saurus, which means lizard in Greek. And the species name vitali, which means life. So it's the Sarkia life, lizard life, as you could say. And it was chosen because the life of Sarkia and the fossil find had sparked. So it's kind of like this really cool discovery in the local town. They're like, oh wow, we found a Plesiosaur, a really interesting animal. I'm going to say I really love how this guy came out. Really interesting animal. We know a lot from it. So the holotype is from a near-complete skull and post-cranial elements, including a complete hindland and various vertebrae. So it's very well known. So it's really cool. And it shows that it's a very short mandibular symbiosis, so very big and wide jaws, also mandibular teeth, which is very a reduced number, so these guys only had 17 to 18 teeth rather than the 25 to 40s in other pliosaurs. And among other features, stuff like that. And the size of the specimen was about almost 10 meters long, so it's one of the largest of the... so let's watch this guy go do his thing. There. Yummy, yum, yum. Now go do your thing, big man. Really love these guys. So, as I mentioned, the estimated length for these guys was almost 10 meters long, so it's one of the largest pliosaurids compared with things like Chronosaurus and things like that. And the specimen has actually been interpreted as a subadult individual, so it very potentially could have got larger, like maybe even 12 meters, we don't know. We don't have an adult specimen yet. But yeah, these guys were kind of at a time where these guys were starting to go out of fashion because most pliosaurs became extinct like around the mid-Cretaceous. So we're starting to see that, and they were getting replaced more with like mosasaurs and things like that, and plesiosaurs. So really, really interesting. The kind of environment it lived in is one of the 4 pliosaurids of this formation, and it's actually been found with Stephyrhinosaurus, Monocurosaurus, and Ectotosaurus, which are other pliosaurids. And it was also contemporary with the elasmosaurids, Calowaeosaurus and Levianectus, and also found with the marine turtle Dismus challis paludi and the Sandwardian turtle Levichallis, and also some ichthyosaurids such as Miscusaurus and Gehuliushka, which were relatives of animals such as Ophthalmosaurus. So yeah, very, very interesting formation. So it's kind of that transition from the later, like the Jurassic type fauna. So you have like your plesiosaurs, your pliosaurs, your ichthyosaurs, and now it's starting to move on to your later animals such as your elasmosaurs, your mosasaurs, and your big turtles and things like that. So yeah, really, really interesting animal, and it's kind of like almost like a relic in its time. Really interesting. It shows that transition. So yeah, I'm a big fan of how this guy came out. Really big and chunky as well. It really fits the specimen, and I like it has no dorsal fin because the original Chronosaurus has that dorsal fin, but it's not meant to have it. But yeah, really, really wonderful. Love this model. So I think this would be a perfect place to end the video. So I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified if I upload anything. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.